In this video, we'll cover the main skill Energy Charge S and cover every single Pokemon that has this main skill, and in general discuss a little bit on the topic of energy. I have covered comprehensively the mechanics of the energy system and particularly the healer Pokemon in Pokemon Sleep, and you can find it in the playlist in the video description called Pokemon Sleep for Beginners. Now, this main skill is interesting in the sense that it can be quite strong. There is some debate on it. For me personally, I like this main skill. A lot of players do not like it because it kind of feels like a wasted potential slot because they may run a very strong healer Pokemon. But in my view, what you can do is the Charge Energy S will boost the Pokemon itself. And if you run a healer as well, you'll quickly hit the ceiling of 150%. And that allows you to switch out the Pokemon either during nighttime or just in and out throughout the day without really having to consider when your healer is proccing. And the overall energy problem is not present with these Pokemon. And so there are quite a few Pokemon with this main skill, so it's a little bit long of a video here, but it is going to be interesting to see how it compares because some of these Pokemon have an insane boost with this main skill in my opinion, and this topic is ripe for discussion in the comments. The first Pokemon we're going to cover here is Umbreon. The reason why Umbreon is interesting in this regard is it's a skill specialist. For the most part, all of the Pokemon with a Charge Energy S has the Berries specialty. And skills is kind of odd because at the highest skill rate in the game with the Umbreon, it has a main skill that boosts its energy. That is so strange because with this skill rate right here, it's going to proc so often that it's just going to live at 150% almost even if it's just level 1. So if you happen to find a shiny Umbreon at some point, it's actually going to be quite nice despite its skill specialist at main skill level 1. If you do evolve a spare Eevee into the Umbreon, we can go into some comparison later of just what kind of sub-skills and all that you want to look for. But for the most part, if you end up with the main skill level 2 on the Umbreon, with this kind of skill rate, you don't really care. Like at that point, you just want the speed and the berry finding, and you're good to go. So Umbreon, a bit of an odd Pokemon. We can go into the comparison here, or out of it rather, into the expansion. So for example, if you have a spare Eevee that looks something like this, then that's going to be perfectly fine on the Umbreon, and then possibly the Adamant nature. So an Umbreon like this would be interesting. Then it becomes kind of like a self-sustaining berry specialist without berry finding because the berry finding is neutralized by the specialty. And so it is a bit of an odd Pokemon. Honestly, not the best. I would possibly put Umbreon in like C tier, possibly D tier, just because there are Pokemon that does its job much better. We can compare it 1-to-1 with a Houndour, or the Houndoom rather. Houndoom is basically the same in terms of ingredient rate. It is basically the same in terms of speed, but because Houndoom is a berry specialist to begin with, when you get the berry finding on it, you get a much higher value. You get that 50% boost. This will be a 100% boost, but it's not sufficient to really justify the Umbreon in my opinion. So for that reason, I'm out. Now, I mean, for that reason, the Umbreon is a D tier. So we've covered some of these, and then we can start on just the long list of the Pokemon here that has the Charge Strength S that can be interesting. And so I'm going to reorient my stuff here just a little bit so that we are all nice and tidy. So we have the Raticate and we have the Arbok. Both of these are berry specialist, and you can see that for the most part, you are looking for the berry finding. because they're berry specialist. And you're also looking for that helping speed because these are fairly slow Pokemon. There will be future videos that will highlight and rank all of the berry specialist Pokemon, so you can stay tuned for that. Subscribe if you haven't. And at that point, we can compare the berry value to the speed, to the ingredient rate, and then also to an extent consider the main skill, and see which one of these berry Pokemon are actually worthwhile. Because even though the Poison Berry is super strong, Arbok is so slow with such a tremendously awful berry rate that it's just not a good Pokemon. Even if you find a poison favored berry area, I don't think Arbok's going to be all that good, and we'll prove that over time. So the mention there is the Eradicate. Obviously, Eradicate has the favored berry on Snowdrop, so that's going to be pretty nice. I think for the most part, though, you will be looking for the Walrein as a berry specialist in that area, but it very much just depends on your collection. Got the Victory Bell next, an ingredient specialist, and then we have the Dodrio. The Dodrio is interesting because it is a berry specialist, it is fast, it has a high berry rate, and despite the fact that this Pamtree berry is low value, I think overall Dodrio, particularly with this charge energy combo, is a very strong Pokemon, and particularly in the beginning. So Dodrio is encounterable at Greengrass and Lapis Lakeside. So while at Greengrass, if you can find a berry finding Dodrio, that can be super strong. And particularly before you find a good healer, this combo here, despite the low skill rate, is going to be very powerful. And if you consider just Dodrio overall, I would say it's an A tier Pokemon. And in my view, I place it at the same spot as Raichu for the most part. Once the electric type berry gets a favored area, then Raichu for sure is going to be bumped up to S tier in my book. And so it's just a matter of time, really. But overall, I would say Dodrio possibly top 6 of the berry specialists. And then we have an interesting Pokemon. I've talked a lot about Victory Bell in multiple videos. And the Charge Energy S here is nice, particularly at the 4% here. That does mean that you can switch it in and out of your teams without really having to think much about it. And as an ingredients specialist, it has a decent selection here of potential. For the most part, you're looking for double potato or triple tomato. And yeah, in terms of sub-skills and natures, also covered that in numerous videos. So won't dig too deep into that in this one. Then we have the Marowak. Marowak is an interesting one in the sense that the cacao drops here are massive for a berry specialist. It is very odd, actually. You can compare it to the Dodrio 1 and 2, 2 and 3. And it also has the potential for triple ginger. But because the cacao value is so much higher than the ginger, if you somehow can find like a busted BFS cacao Marowak, that could be pretty strong. And yet again, you can see overall with a lot of these charge energy Pokemon, they're quite slow. Not quite sure what that's all about, but the almost 5% skill rate here is massive. That's going to proc very often, almost every time you open the game. And then we have the Dragonite. Dragonite is a big Pokemon in my opinion, and same with the Tyranitar. In my view, you really want the berry finding on these Pokemon because the ingredient rate is already so high that if you run a triple herb Dragonite and a triple ginger Tyranitar, you are within reasonable time going to collect enough of the ingredients that you're targeting to where you can afford the leeway of filling up your inventory with berries. Both of these Pokemon also evolve twice and have decent inventories to start with. So Dragonite is 30 if evolved from Dratini, and Tyranitar 29 if from Larvitar. And with a single like ingredient finder M here, you're gonna be off to the races. And so you have space for the extra inventory and berry finding because you're also super fast. So you don't have to worry too much about the speed either. So overall, just incredibly strong Pokemon. And you can see the Dragonite here has a much lower, it's actually half, skill rate than the Tyranitar. They both have the increased EXP curves, so it's a lot more difficult to train them up. But I think the main thing here on the Dragonite is not only the triple herb potential or the double corn, but it's the berry value. Dragonite has a much stronger berry than the Tyranitar, and I think that kind of makes sense here on the skill rates, because Dragonite could quickly become like very, very busted if not. And then actually the last Pokemon here is the Altaria. Altaria also gets the Charge Energy S main skill, and it has a super high skill rate. It is slow as well, so a common theme for the Charge Energy S is they're slow Pokemon. So definitely want the helping speed on the Altaria and the berry finding. And at that point, you just want more speed. So Altaria with berry finding and double speed is going to be super strong. And yeah, it is a bit unfortunate with the speed here, but overall, decent Pokemon. And it's going to be exciting to see whenever there is a new area with the dragon type berry, the Yachi. So I don't think I have too much to talk about in this video other than the table itself. I have said in the beginning of this video that you don't really need to consider the main skill seeds in this one. A lot of the Pokemon will have at least 1 or 2 evolutions, so you'll get to level 2 or 3 main skill just naturally. But at level 6, the energy strength is 43 per proc. So for example, Altaria here with a 6%, that is insane. So even without a healer Pokemon, the Altaria at that point is just gonna live at the max energy, which is 150%. It is unfortunate that when you overcap the 150%, nothing happens. Like you don't get any boost or EXP or stuff like that, but I think that's mostly for game balance. And I guess with just the whole structure for the main skills, the way that they work is you have the different levels, and there are just certain sub skills, the main skills, that are decently functional at level 2, 3, maybe 4. So yeah, not all of these main skills are intended to be used all the way until, level 10 or whatever the max is. But what could be interesting then is if you just run one of these Pokemon into the ground in terms of energy, they can bounce back quick if they are that level 4, 5, 6, 7, which would be ridiculous and something you shouldn't go for. But yeah, like if you get that perfect Dragonite otherwise, but it happens to have skill level up M at level 75, like yeah, that's gonna be fun with 33 energy healed every time. So I think that was it for this topic. You can leave a like if you liked the video, and you can hit your thoughts in the comments. And in the video description as well, there are playlists for all my videos. The Pokemon Sleep content is sorted in a few different playlists, very nicely and structured. So have a look at those, and subscribe for more Pokemon Sleep videos. Thank you for watching.